How's it going, YouTube Examples? TCG here, coming at you with a brand new video, and today I'm bringing you guys another deck profile here on YuGiOh Pro 2. The reason I haven't been bringing you guys in real life deck profiles is because I haven't really got any finished decks apart from my Light Swan / Six Samurai build that I want to bring you guys obviously in real life. I've still got my Fire Kings to finish off, like the updated Fire Kings, which I've already profiled on YuGiOh Pro anyway. I've also got my Mermail deck, again I've already profiled that for you guys on YuGiOh Pro, being built at this moment in time as well. And I haven't actually opened any of the new set yet. I'm hoping to order some of that set fairly soon so I can open it up, see what decks I actually want to build from that, and then start obviously constructing the decks going from there. So I thought to myself, the best way to obviously bring you guys content, which is what I've promised, is to bring you guys deck profiles and videos from this particular application. For now, I will probably end up getting you guys some stuff from locals this weekend anyway. I'm attending locals on the day that this is being uploaded, which is the Sunday. Actually, no, I think this might be going up on the Saturday, which therefore means that the Sunday is when I'm going to be recording the majority of my videos for the upcoming few days. I'm hoping to get some feature matches, not necessarily myself, but I'm hoping to get obviously feature matches from the tournament, from obviously a single table, for example, set up my camera and just let it roll out during the course of the tournament, and then obviously take all the footage that I need, all the different excuse me, all the different games, and obviously upload those games to you guys. We're going to try and catch the final as well, or the top table. Yeah, it would be the final, I guess, but the top table right at the end as well, just to see obviously who wins. I'm going to try and get some deck profiles from the winners of the locals that I didn't attend a few weeks back. I think there was a locals 2 or 3 weeks ago, and then a couple of weeks before that one as well, where there was 2 different winners. So I'm going to try and get some deck profiles from them on obviously what they ran. I'm also going to bring you guys some locals, not feedback, but my little journey through locals, if that makes sense, and how I played, what my matchups were, etc, etc, and what deck I played. I'll obviously profile that deck as well in that video. But no, let's get on to today's video, which is going to be a Gravekeeper deck profile. Now, this is no means a deck that I would encourage people to take to regionals or anything like that, but if you're looking to have a bit of fun, you're looking to just play a nostalgic deck, and you're looking to play a deck that you could just mess about with your friends, or you could take to locals and just sit down against someone else that you know has like a fun deck, or if you have a locals where you can only use non-meta decks, I guess there's some people out there that just make the rules up and say, look, this week we're not going to run any meta decks. I know for a fact my locals sometimes do that. They say, right, no meta decks, so you can't bring this, and this, and then you've got to basically bring a deck that no one would really expect, and it's not really quote-unquote meta. Normally I'd run around with my Fire Kings at that particular event. Obviously I haven't finished my Fire Kings yet, so I can't do that, but I know that my locals does something along those lines occasionally, so this could be a deck you could take to those kind of events as well. But nevertheless, let's get into the profile, and also I'll go through my card choices as usual. So I play 3 copies of Gravekeeper's Heretic as the first card in the deck. Basically, as long as Necro Valley is on the field, this card is unaffected by all other card effects, meaning that it's basically untouchable when you have Necro Valley on the field. Yes, it's a little bit situational because you need to have Necro Valley on the field for this guy to be untouchable, quote unquote. However, at the same time, the whole prevalence of this particular Gravekeeper deck is to get Necro Valley as quickly as possible, put it on your side of the field, and just make plays from there. Hence why I do run 3 copies of Heretic. Then run 3 copies of Descendant. You can tribute another Gravekeeper's monster to target one card your opponent controls and destroy that target, so that can get rid of quite a few problematic cards. Obviously, it won't get rid of a lot of the meta cards because there's a lot of ways around this particular effect in the current meta, but still it is something that is there that you guys could potentially use if you wish to use it in obviously a fun build. Then run 3 copies of Recruiter, probably one of the best Gravekeeper cards out there. Basically, when you control, let's try that again. When this card you control is sent to the graveyard, add 1 Gravekeeper's monster with 1,500 or less defense from your deck to your hand, which basically targets quite a few cards. It targets obviously the Descendant. It doesn't target Heretic, so that's obviously 1,800. It doesn't target Commandant either, but it does target Assailant. In fact, it's defense, isn't it? Not offense. Yeah, defense even. Sorry. So it does target Heretic, it does target Descendant, it does target Commandant, it targets Assailant, it basically targets everything in this build apart from Spy. I would never search out Spy or Recruiter anyway. I'd always probably go for Commandant or Descendant, depending on the situation. But this card is probably one of the best cards to actually search out Descendant or your Commandant anyway, hence why I run 3 copies of Recruiter. I then run 3 copies of Spy. When this card is flipped face up, you can special summon 1 Gravekeeper's monster with 1,500 or less attack from your deck, which doesn't actually target Heretic, which is a little bit disappointing, but it targets pretty much the rest of the deck anyway, so that's quite handy. It can obviously help with a lot of plays on your side of the field. 3 copies of Commandant. I never ever summon this card unless I already have gone through all copies of Necro Valley. I normally just ditch Commandant, get Necro Valley, play Necro Valley, and then go and play other, obviously, Gravekeeper's cards that would be a little bit more helpful if I was to be playing this deck. I would definitely ditch Commandant, I'd get my Necro Valley, I'd play my Necro Valley, and then I'd probably end up going into something along the lines of Recruiter, Descendant, Heretic. Probably Heretic if I had it, because obviously of its effect, but 9 times out of 10, Commandant is literally just ditched for the Necro Valley anyway. So I do run 3 copies of that. There's a lot of ways to get Necro Valley in this deck, and as I said, the main point of a Gravekeeper deck, in my opinion, or this particular build anyway, is to get Necro Valley as quickly as possible and then be able to do things from there. I then run 2 copies of Assailant. Don't really like this card that much, if I'm perfectly honest, but at the same time it can be quite handy. When this card declares an attack while Necro Valley is on the field, you can target 1 face-up monster your opponent controls, and you can change its battle position. Meaning that obviously if there's a card that this card can't run over, or something on your board can't run over, you can literally just target it, switch it to defense or attack, depending on obviously which one you need it to go to. Excuse me. And obviously run it over with either Assailant or something else if you need to obviously get rid of a problematic card. I then run 2 copies of Nobleman. The reason I run Nobleman is solely and utterly because when the card is destroyed and sent to my graveyard via obviously the result of a battle, I can then special summon a Gravekeeper monster from my deck face down in defense position, which means that I can go for Spy or I can go for the next card, which is Ambusher. Depending on the situation, I would probably go for Spy 90% of the time because it's a more useful card. However, with Ambusher, it's another way to get into a Necro Valley, so that is why I do run 1 copy of Ambusher in the deck. When this card is flipped face up, you can target 1 card in your opponent's graveyard, place that target on the bottom of their deck, which obviously helps your opponent because the amount of times that people can search through their deck in the game currently, shuffle it up and probably find that card is ridiculous, but still it is there anyway. Unfortunately, it does have that effect. The latter effect is what we're really using this card for, which is if it's then sent to the graveyard after obviously being flipped face up, you can target 1 Necro Valley in your graveyard and add it to your hand. This card's effect isn't affected by the effect of Necro Valley even, which means that if obviously this gets sent to the graveyard and someone's already destroyed your Necro Valley, you can just basically take that Necro Valley even back from your graveyard and use it again, and obviously it's another card that your opponent has to worry about, hence why I do run the 1 copy of Ambusher. If I'm honest, I'd probably cut down the Assailant and run 2 copies of Ambusher if I was to make this build in real life. But at the same time, Ambusher isn't that great and stats wise, so it's a 50-50 toss up basically between those 2 cards in my opinion. I then run 1 copy of Gravekeeper's Shaman. This card gains 200 defense for each Gravekeeper's monster in your graveyard. Negate all monsters effect that activate in the graveyard, except Gravekeeper monsters. Whilst Necro Valley is on the field, your opponent cannot activate field spell cards. Also, field spell cards on the field cannot be destroyed by opponent's card effects. I basically run Shaman to protect my Necro Valley. I don't feel the need to run any more than 1. However, just rereading the effect of Shaman, I would probably end up bumping that up to at least 2 if I ran this deck. But at the same time, the fact that it's a level 6 and it's only got 1500 attack kind of makes up for the fact that I only run 1 copy in this particular build, solely because obviously as much as it protects Necro Valley, you've got to obviously tribute one of your Gravekeepers to be able to summon it onto the field anyway. So it's a little bit of a 50-50 split as to whether or not you actually want to run more than 1 copy of this particular card, a little bit like the Ambusher over Assailant, Assailant over Ambusher, little not argument, but little like conversation I had with myself just a second ago. But still, I run on one copy of Gravekeeper Shaman. Then run one copy of Gravekeeper's Visionary. You can tribute summon this card by tributing one Gravekeeper monster. This card gains 200 attack for each Gravekeeper's monster in your graveyard. If this face-up card on the field would be destroyed, you can discard one Gravekeeper monster instead. Obviously meaning that if you solely run Gravekeepers, which I tend to do in this deck, apart from obviously 3 monsters, you can just continuously ditch your Gravekeeper monsters to keep Visionary on your side of the field if you wish, and it continues to bump up its attack every single time you do that, which is quite handy, obviously in keeping a big boss monster on your side of the field. I then run one copy of Gravekeeper's Oracle, basically the brother slash sister, however you want to look at it, to Visionary. You can tribute 3 monsters or 1 Gravekeeper monster to tribute summon, but not set this card. When this card is tribute summoned, you can activate any of these effects and resolve in sequence up to the number of Gravekeeper monsters tributed for the summon. This card gains attack equal to the combined levels of all the monsters tributed for its tribute summon had on the field times 100, so that is pretty hefty considering that 90% of your Gravekeeper monsters are level 4s, meaning that's 400 attack per obviously Gravekeeper monster that you have tributed for Oracle. Second effect, destroy all set monsters your opponent controls. Don't feel like that's going to be too prevalent in the current meta. I don't feel like too many decks actually set monsters nowadays. Most of them play them in attack mode because you can literally flood the board with 90%, if not 80% of the decks that are out there at the moment. And the final one, all monsters your opponent currently controls lose 2000 attack and defense. That's quite big, meaning that pretty much every card in this deck will be able to run over something that your opponent controls, regardless of obviously its level, which is pretty insane if you ask me. But obviously at the same time you have to have at least 3 Gravekeeper monsters tributed for Oracle to be able to actually trigger that effect, but 9 times out of 10 you're probably going to have 3 Gravekeeper monsters to do that anyway. So 1 copy of Oracle is really all you need. I was debating putting 2 in, but I don't feel the need to put 2 in if I'm totally honest with you guys. And then run 1 copy of Dark Armed because literally every single card in this deck, apart from the 2 Ash Blossoms and the 3 Commandants, are darks, meaning that this card has a lot of opportunity to be actually used in this deck. Then run 2 copies of Ash Blossom. Basically, I felt the need of having at least 1 hand trap in this particular deck. If you were going to play it at a locals, like against meta decks, this card could come in handy. As I said, I don't recommend running this particular build or this particular deck in the current meta because, if I'm going to be honest with you guys, it's not the greatest deck to be running. But at the same time, if you do wish to run this and you don't have, obviously, say the money to buy all the meta decks and you actually want to try this out and tinker with it at your locals against the meta decks, I would thoroughly recommend having some sort of hand trap in there, hence why there's 2 copies of Ash Blossom in this particular build. I then run 3 copies of Necro Valley, the main card of this deck. All Gravekeeper monsters gain 500 attack and defense. Cards in the graveyard cannot be banished. Negate any card effect that would move a card in the graveyard to a different place. Negate any card effects that change types or attributes in the graveyard as well. Obviously, this was very good back in the day, not so great now, but at the same time, it does help out with the attack and defense of your Gravekeeper monsters anyway. That's the main reason that this card is so prevalent in the deck, because it does bump up the attack of 90% of your monsters to a decent level, so you can actually combat with obviously your opponent's monsters, which is quite handy, meaning that 3 copies of Necro Valley, in my personal opinion, is pretty much needed in this deck. Then run 3 copies of Gravekeeper's Style. Target 2 Gravekeeper monsters in the graveyard, add those targets to your hand, and this particular effect cannot be negated by Necro Valley. So if you have Necro Valley on your side of the field, for example, you play Style, it doesn't get negated, and you can add 2 Gravekeeper monsters from your graveyard to your hand, which means that you can replenish the plays that you've already gone through. Sometimes you don't want to do that, for example, with Visionary. If you have obviously Gravekeeper monsters in your graveyard, it gains attack, so you don't really want to see Style too late on if you do have Visionary out on your side of the field. But at the same time, you can then replenish your Gravekeepers to discard for Visionary if you do end up obviously using Style whilst he's on the board. So 3 copies of Style is in this particular build. Then run 2 copies of Terraforming, so if you don't see any of the commandants, this is another way to get your Necro Valley even as quickly as you possibly can. And then run 1 copy of Hidden Temples of Necro Valley. Activate only if both a Gravekeeper monster and Necro Valley are on the field. Neither player can special summon monsters except Gravekeeper monsters. If either a Gravekeeper monster or Necro Valley is not on the field, destroy this card. Obviously a very, very situational card. You have to have Necro Valley, you have to have a Gravekeeper monster for it to resolve. However, at the same time, no one can special summon monsters unless they are a Gravekeeper monster, which shuts down a lot of decks in the current format because they can't special summon, which is quite handy. But as I said, I only run 1 copy because it's so situational. You have to have a Gravekeeper monster and you have to have Necro Valley. That's not too bad if you say have Commandant, something you can summon Gravekeeper wise, and the not Necro Valley, but like obviously your hand is full, plus you've got the Hidden Temple, for example. So your Hidden Temple, Commandant, and then I don't know, a Recruiter, for example. If you've got those 3 in your hand, then you've pretty much locked down the game until someone actually ends up destroying Hidden Temple with Necro Valley, which is quite easy nowadays. There's a lot of cards to target back row, but if you can get that combo off in your first turn in a fun duel against another deck that isn't quite meta and it's a little bit like on the fun orientated side, not the serious orientated side, you could probably end up winding them up a little bit with that card. It's up to yourself, obviously, if you want to run the card. If you are going to build a Gravekeeper deck, I would recommend at least running 1 just to have it there, just in case it does end up being useful. But at the same time, I can see why people wouldn't run it in the Gravekeeper build anyway. I then run 1 copy of Monster Reborn, pretty self-explanatory, alongside the 1 copy of Raigeki. Then I run pretty much the whole Solemn Brigade as the only traps that I run in this particular build. Didn't really know what other traps to run. I didn't know if I wanted to run any traps at all, but I thought I'll put some traps into the build just to say these would be the ones that I ran if I ran this deck for a fun little, obviously, a fun little deck to run. But at the same time, I was contemplating not running any traps in the deck at all, but it is what it is. I put the Solemn Brigade in there. If you guys want to take that out and put something else in, if you are looking to obviously run this deck, by all means do so. I've just had a funny thought actually. This deck I used to run when I lived with my parents, and this was probably some time ago actually. Obviously some of the cards weren't around. For example, the Heretic wasn't around, the Oracle wasn't around, Ash Blossom wasn't around, all that kind of stuff. Neither was the Solemn Brigade. I think we had Solemn Judgment and Solemn Warning. We might have only just had Solemn Judgment at that time, but still. I used to run something similar to this back when I lived with my parents, and there wasn't actually any Yu-Gi-Oh! Locals in my town at that time. So the people that actually played the card game on my street, we would end up making our own tournaments. We like put up different prizes for obviously the winner and stuff, and it would just be held in like one of our houses, which was pretty cool. But I remember using this particular, not this build, but this particular archetype against people at these tournaments, and they just got a little bit annoyed at me because I started obviously stopping them from doing things that they wanted to do with regards to the graveyard side of things with Necro Valley, which was quite fun to see their reactions. But that what I'm trying to say, guys, is this is by no means a competitive build. It's by no means a build that I'm saying to you guys, go and use this at your locals, you'll win all the time. Like you'll probably not win any games at a serious locals unless you've got obviously other people that aren't playing like top tier decks. They're just there for fun. They've got an old school deck, or they've got a deck that isn't really meta related. This would probably be a good deck to obviously sit down against those people with. But if you're going to be sitting down against someone that's got, I don't know, some ridiculous meta deck, I'm trying to think of a meta deck off the top of my head at the moment, but one that isn't coming to me. But still, if you sat down against someone that was playing a meta deck, you don't really have a chance with this build, if I'm honest. As you can see, I don't have an extra deck and I don't have a side deck. If this was going to be a build that I was considering playing myself, or I actually wanted to like figure out what I would run if I was going to run the deck, I would have put the extra deck in there. Obviously, I don't know how many people would run a extra deck in Gravekeepers when everything's revolving around Necro Valley and the Gravekeeper side of things. But still, if you guys want to make an extra deck, by all means do so. But as I said, this is more of a fun build. It's more of a fun deck. It's not really a deck that I would be using myself, if that makes sense. Like, I don't see myself ever building a Gravekeeper deck in the future unless I get some ridiculous support, which I highly, highly doubt, because we've had support quite recently in the form of Ambusher Heretic, and I can't remember her name now, Nobleman. So yeah, as I keep saying, it's a fun build. It's not a serious build, but if you guys want to use it at your locals, if you do have a fun quote unquote day for your locals, then by all means do so. But nevertheless, guys, that's going to do it for today's deck profile. Hopefully, I'll have a little bit more of a serious deck profile for you next time around when I do a deck profile. As I said, I'm hopefully going to get a lot of recording done when I go to my locals on Sunday, meaning that you guys will have a lot of content to watch from Sunday onwards until I obviously bulk record again or make a opening or whatever actually ends up happening after my locals, because I feel like I'm going to have enough content from my locals to be able to go all the way up until my next bulk recording session. So that will be quite good and quite handy. But nevertheless, guys, thanks for tuning into this video. If you did enjoy it, please leave a like, rating, and subscribe to the channel for more Yu-Gi-Oh! And other trading card game content. I've had a little bit of a thought process to myself, and I thought to myself, I will start collecting Pokemon cards again. I will start opening Pokemon related products on my channel again as well. I also want to start collecting the Dragon Ball Super trading card game, because I'm a big fan of Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball Super, like the whole Dragon Ball franchise. So I'm looking to get into that card game as well. And if there's any other card games that you guys recommend that I start playing or start collecting or start opening, by all means leave them in the description, not the description, sorry, the comment section down below. I'll have a look into them. I may end up opening a few things and a few products from that particular card game and just seeing if I can get into it. But nevertheless, guys, as I said, that's the end of this video. I will be leaving a link in the description down below to my Twitch channel. If you guys want to go and check that out, that'll be greatly appreciated. I'm also going to leave a link to the Vortex TCG channel as well. It's a little project of my own trading card game that I'm currently working on with a friend of mine. So there will be some content going up onto that channel fairly soon. So if you guys want to go and check that out, that'll be greatly appreciated as well. But nevertheless, guys, thanks for tuning in. It is much appreciated. As I said, hit that like button if you did enjoy the video. Obviously, it isn't a meta build, as I said. There will be meta builds and more serious builds coming in the future, so be tuned for that. Nevertheless, guys, thanks for tuning in. I'll see you in my next video.